All right. I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I hope that you can hear us. Let me see. The sound looks okay from my end. Can somebody in the chat please confirm? We're just going to very quickly introduce the panel, and then we'll let people in on Zoom who are joining us, who submitted for this. So this is a live review of Mia's World, our little anime film. So we're giving feedback on 6 or so of the submissions, and then everybody will receive written feedback via email as usual, and we'll do a prize draw for a sample library at the end, and we will also select somebody to have a string quartet session with Northern Film Orchestra. So Brian and Stefan, can you just quickly introduce yourselves?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Brian Morrell. I work at Leeds Conservatoire, where I wrote the film music degree that runs there. I teach on the film music degree, and I'm also deputy head of the school in which film music sits. I'm still reasonably active in the industry, doing bits of music for film and theatre, and I recently did something that's still playing right now on Broadway in New York, a play that I wrote the music for. So I still managed to get my hands dirty doing it for real. That's me.
Lovely.
Yeah, I'm Stefan Gordon. I work with Brian as well at Leeds Conservatoire. I'm principal lecturer. I teach film studies and film production, so looking at screenwriting, directing, editing, all that kind of stuff. I also do other industry stuff as well.
We are broadcasting from 3 of the great cities of the world: Doncaster, London, and Los Angeles. I'll let the audience figure out which is which.
Yeah.
You're definitely in Doncaster.
So I want.
Yeah, Brian's in Doncaster. Right? Yeah.
That's right. Look.
Yeah, I'm in LA.
Behold Doncaster. Okay.
Looking awfully nice weather there, Brian.
So we've got some. It's actually quite overcast. But anyway, we digress. We're gonna let 14 of you now into the Zoom. Yeah. So do you want to unleash them, Stefan?
Yeah. Everybody should be. There we go.
Yeah. I'm in LA. Behold Doncaster.
Hello. Can you
Yeah.
Can you mute your microphones if you're not speaking, because we can hear ourselves echoing back, which isn't great. Hello everybody. Hello everybody and welcome. Some familiar faces there.
Hello.
I see Sally and Paul Coles and Darren Clark and David Simonson, and yeah, some good familiar names. Raymond Shaw, hello. Yeah, this is fantastic. From many places also around the world. Micah, hi Micah. I met Micah last night. That was really nice. Yeah, that was lovely. I hope you enjoyed it, Micah.
Yes, I did.
It was lovely to meet you, man. We have someone else wanted to join us? And David. I met David last night. David Simonson. Hi, David.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you had a nice evening. Who else? Was there anybody else that was there last night? No. So yeah.
I was there. I met you.
Who's that? Where? Who? Where?
Andy.
That's Andy.
I can't see Andy. Where's Andy?
Do you not see Andy?
Where's Andy? Oh yeah. Hi Andy.
He's there, yeah.
Hi Andy. Yeah,
Hey.
I can just see all these little postage stamp faces on my laptop. Yeah, great to meet you, Andy. Did you enjoy the evening?
You too. Yeah, it was great.
Thanks for coming along, and I hope that you and some other people will join us on Saturday morning for our walk in Griffith Park. That'll be lovely. Before I jump on a plane back to Doncaster. So before we start with all these in-jokes, hi Sally, nice to see you. And Paul, hi Paul. We're here primarily to review some of the submissions for the Mia's World, and I've noticed in the live chat a few of you have made the observation that this was quite a difficult one, and actually Brian, Stefan and myself, we were also reflecting on the fact that it seemed like it was a difficult one for some of you. Brian and Stefan, do you want to sort of talk about some of the general observations?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm glad you guys have brought it up actually, because one of the last ones we looked at before was a documentary, and there were some fantastic entries for that, and in many ways documentaries are a little bit of an easier gig. This one was difficult because Mia was talking pretty much most of the time. That's always difficult to write around the back of the dialogue. Also, a lot of it was very subtle. A lot of the words that she was coming out with the script was very subtle. It was very philosophical. It was very life-affirming. There was lots of subtext flying around and lots of deep meaning. And because of that, the words have really got to be able to breathe. And we did find out, it's all part of the learning curve, obviously, but what we've got to really try and get across is to let the dialogue breathe and to let those meanings come through. And some of you did. We've got some great ones to play tonight. But there were quite a few, I would say the majority, that just in some way, shape or form just slightly wrote over the dialogue a little bit. Over to you, Stefan. Do you want to say a few things about that?
Similar points really, and I'm glad it's been flagged up early on in the chat as well, because it was, as Brian just said, actually, it was interesting because I thought the insects documentary, I thought the standard was really high, and that's driven by a voiceover, funny enough, as well. So when it came to this one, I was thinking, well, you've had that sort of practice with the voiceover, but I think I was trying to work out, because I felt a lot of them, I mean, not all of them, as Brian says, we've got some ones to show you tonight, which are really good, it's a common problem was writing over what the voiceover, and I think it was there's a few reasons. Maybe this idea of, and looking at people's notes that they wrote in the sheet as well, you could see that people were really tuning into what was being said, which is great about the character. But I thought that perhaps the title of it, Mia's World, it was trying to create this world for Mia, but the problem was you actually ended up, quite a few of them were writing over Mia's World, so Mia's World was difficult to actually engage with because the music was really dominating. So the other issue.
Sorry. Can people mute themselves?
So my other point, I think, with this I noticed was people were tuning into what she said. So things like her lines of dialogue when she said, I think lines like melody and beats, people were sort of trying to then create melody and beats, which is really problematic for film music. So you're kind of following exactly what was being said in the dialogue. So I think just trying to let the voice come forward. So when both Brian's and I were talking, I think maybe last week,
a motorbike, and it's got a bit of a Tron vibe, and I think some of those were just going for motorbike, and it's got a bit of a Tron vibe, and I think some of those were just going for that little thing. And like Steph says, it is hard to do this kind of thing. I can remember one of the first film I ever did with Stefan years ago, The Appointment, which is a war film, and there's a guy talking in that, and when almost everything I was trying to play got in the way. And it just seemed to me like, what am I going to do? I should leave this alone. And in the end, I managed to write something which coexisted at the same time. But it is hard. So just to put that out there, it is hard.
Also, I think just one last point before we start looking at clips is not only just writing around the voice, but choosing the instruments, because I think sometimes high frequency instruments are going to just clog up or clash with lines of dialogue as well. So it's sort of sometimes it's just catching it because of the choice of instruments. So I think it's just one of those things of just keep working on it and you'll get a feel for it. And obviously, I think that's what the Q-Tube's all about, is trying this out so you can develop your craft anyway. So just keep doing this.
And I think that we're talking about potentially doing a masterclass focusing specifically on some of these issues, aren't we? So I think that'll be great. I mean, like somebody already said, I think it might have been Brian or Stefan, I can't remember, mentioned that the documentary also had a voiceover. It had an off-screen narration. And so I guess on paper you would think, well, what's the difference? But the difference is with that off-screen dialogue on the documentary that it's basically very conversational. It's and you need music to bring it to life. Whereas this dialogue was very poetic,
and it was very subtle and it was very kind of subtextual, and it was brilliant as well when all those things she was saying, like, my name is Mia and I make every beat count. It's like, whoa. You know, there were some moments in that film that just had to be left alone. Or not left alone, but had to be dealt with very carefully by chords and textures as opposed to single instruments. But that's it, really, yeah.
And I think you liked the voice as well, didn't you, Brian? The way it was executed. And
it was just superb.
And I suppose that as a composer, I mean, obviously I have a limited extent to which I know what I'm talking about, but I imagine that you almost have to think of the voice as one of the instruments, yeah, in this kind of process.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, like Steph said about it being a singer in a band, and you know, it's the same kind of consideration. I've done a lot of work, and still do, but a ton of work in the pop industry doing orchestration work for pop artists, and when you're choosing the orchestral palette to go with a singer or a male singer or a female singer, that's the top of your list. It's like, right, let's avoid woodwind, let's avoid this, let's do that. He's down there, let's go mid, let's go up there with strings, and it's the top of your list. It's how to exist in the same world as the dialogue, and it's more to do with textures than it is to do with composing.
It's almost like a melody in this one, isn't it? It's almost a melody.
Absolutely,
yeah.
It is.
Yeah, one last, because it reminded me, because one of the things I kept saying with a lot of my feedback was the voiceover. So that's an actor. You can't obviously you can't see, but you can see the character obviously, but that voice actor is performing, so that performance has been projected, so it's with how the director wanted it, and so that performance has got its own rhythm, it's got its own tempo, and that takes priority. So if you alter that tempo or rhythm with beats, say, so there's quite a few of the submissions were beat based, and they would have had a strict tempo, so that means the voice has got nowhere to go. It has to follow that, so it's locked into it. So for a viewer, they're going to be locked into the beat, not to the voice. There's constantly changing tempo.
I mean, when you're also, just to finish off from my point of view, you know, when you're writing music, you are talking. That's what music is. Music is a language, and it's basically an emotional language, because very few people understand what they're listening to in literal terms, but they understand it in emotional terms. So you are talking. If you're talking the same time as she's talking, then you've got to be talking the same language, basically. And that's the issue. It wasn't so much that people were writing over it, it's just sometimes what they were writing, you know, particularly with the drums. And there were a few that we looked at where the music was just too loud. And there were a few we looked at where the music worked beautifully because it was dubbed really well. You know, I mean, not only had they written the music really well, they'd actually placed it really well in the film. So yeah.
I mean, it's great, really. It's almost like a feedback loop. So we provide a film, you guys have a go at it, we look at these, and then we're able to tailor our challenges and our masterclasses and everything to kind of see where the need is, and it works really well, I think. So I don't want anybody to feel despondent about this. You know, this is exactly what the QTube is about, as Brian said, and you know, I hope that all of you can see that and see the value in this feedback. I love it. It's great, and to see, and I think, Brian, you've noticed, and Stefan too, that you've noticed people taking some of the feedback on board for future in subsequent submissions and things like that.
Yeah, they've actually mentioned it sometimes. We always look at the text that you guys write when you describe what you're going to do and your reasons for doing it, and it comes up frequently, actually. You know, that you've watched some previous gig that me and Stefan have done or whatever, and you've listened to the advice, and that's really good. That's really good to see. Yeah.
So it's great to see this as a process rather than self-contained little episodes. You know, it's a journey, and it's fantastic. And actually, the Greg film that is the current challenge has a similar challenge in the sense that the voice is really strident. It's really you know, a character, and it's definitely a challenge for writing music, but you know, it's a deliberate director's choice, because the tempo of the voice is implying or creating the energy and the dynamism of the whole clip, and the job of the music there is to support that and not to put something kind of pastoral or something ambient. It just wouldn't work.
Also just to come in on that really briefly.
I've lost you, Brian.
I don't know what I did, so I accidentally muted. Yeah, the directors have often built in a BPM to the film, which, to be honest, I'm not a great fan of, because it's like temp tracks. You know, they kind of ruin your kind of conceptualization process. But I've had directors saying, I've got a BPM in there, so they want you to write to this, and it just underscores how much they want the music to be of a certain rhythmic ilk. You know. Sorry, Stefan, you were going to come in.
No, same really. It's just the thing about voiceover, because some directors love them, some hate them, you know, but it is totally an aesthetic choice to have that. So, you know, I think then the composer's got to take that and has got to then work alongside that and not sort of dominate it. So same point really.
Was that an ice cream van or a mobile phone?
Oh yeah, I was going to say, is it what we're going to get for the ice cream van?
Brian, you're muted.
Brian, you're muted.
Believe it or not, that was my doorbell. The power went out on my doorbell, and it's reset itself to the tune of The Entertainer, which is so embarrassing. Great song though. I'm going to close the door actually in a minute anyway. Yeah.
Okay, so let's crack on. So Stefan, you've got the cue list.
Yes. So we're showing 6 tonight, and the first one is Alexander McMillan. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yeah.
Hear it.
You know those moments when the world slows down and you see things differently? That's where I live. Between the beats and the breaths, where the ordinary meets the unexpected. In this city of concrete and whispers, every corner holds a secret, every alley a story waiting to be told. I've learned that life's a series of choices, like a melody waiting to be composed. Each note, each step, it's all a part of a rhythm that only I can hear. Whether I'm riding through the city or lost in thought with my headphones on, I'm constantly chasing dreams. The kind that keep you awake at night and drive you forward. I'm Mia, and I make every beat count. This is my anthem, my journey through this symphony of life.
Okay.
I just got off there.
Okay, right. So I thought this was marvellous. I mean, this was amongst the best we had. I mean, the mixing and the dubbing and the production was just spot on, and the person's ability to write for the orchestra in a really convincing kind of cinematic way. So I've put here, there's some really nice piano stuff at the beginning, obviously, which you all heard. And I've put that you've written well for it and created some expressive colours and harmonies and textures. The initial piano comes in just after she could have started. Half a second later, that would have been spot on. It might have been helpful to start the music a little bit later. The music over where she says, "That's where I live," when you see the title card, that works beautifully well. There's a real sense of solitude and beauty in this music. About 15 seconds in, you've got this gorgeous chord change, which I think the composer goes from C to E minor, and it's just this really life-affirming little chord trick. And she does. Sorry, the composer does it. I keep talking about the composer as a girl because I'm thinking of Mia. But the chord sequence then goes C, E minor, and it's got that typical like John Williams-esque kind of running around the chord. So that was beautiful. The composer also uses the sharp 4 quite a lot, so they use the piano and the B flat, and then they put a little sharp 4 then that just brings in that sense of mystery. Whenever you put a sharp 4 in any kind of film music, it has a different effect. If you put it in a horror film, it has a specific effect. If you put it in this, it just gives you that feeling of wonderment. There's also the bit where Mia talks about concrete and whispers, and this is where the composer moves to a very definite and slight dramatic change in the music. Again, we come back to the C, to the E minor, to the B flat. Again, it's that repetition of that same idea, making you acclimatise to that. But it's excellent in terms of how you follow the emotions and you create some textural and harmonic colours, which really give the section a lift. And finally, I've put the ability to modulate between different key centres. That's not easy, and it's especially not easy with a 60-piece orchestra behind you. And the composer has done spectacularly well on this, very impressive. Whatever they've done never sounds forced, and it never sounds overcooked. It sounds natural. It sounds as if it was born with the film. It doesn't sound like the music is something that's been done to the film. It sounds like it just existed with the film right from the get-go. And there's a lovely chord trick right at the end where they go D flat, F minor, and then the B major there. So there's some absolutely gorgeous little chord changes. And because the general listening public aren't listening to those as chords, they're not listening literally. When they hear that, they don't say, oh, that's a D flat going to an F minor going to a B, that's cool. They will listen to that and interpret that as emotion. And this is what the composer understands. And this is what composers need to understand, that when they're writing music, nobody listens to it literally. They listen to it and they distill it emotionally. So that's me then. So over to you, Steph.
Yeah, Brian's covered a lot of what I was going to say. I thought this was really, really nice, actually, a really nice piece. And the main thing that Brian mentioned was that it felt like it belonged there, and that's the trick with film music, like it is with other elements of filmmaking, like the editing. Once you sort of become aware of the editing, or something's not quite right. But I thought musically it was meant to be there, particularly at the beginning. So as soon as it sort of starts, you go, wow, this is just sits really well. And I thought it was really respectful of the voice as well at the start, particularly at the start, and the picture, and it enhanced Mia's world. So musically, really well done. I thought composition wise, if someone was to sort of present me that without the picture, and I just go, wow, this is someone who really knows what they're doing in terms of their composition skills. So the writing was great, and I thought the handling of the production was also really great. I thought as it progressed, so this is really connecting up what we've been saying at the start, it started to surround the film rather than support it. So I felt there was moments where it felt like it was wrapping itself around the film rather than giving it sort of that lift. It's kind of it's one of those things that often happens because it feels like the dynamics of the film are increasing, which they are. So the music does, but I think sometimes you've got to let the film run ahead slightly and not overwhelm it at the same time. And I think there's a little bit of that. So further down the line, it started to sort of dominate. I felt a little bit. I did notice in my feedback that it could be a mix and volume issue, which could sort it out. But I do feel that it was quite possibly more. It was maybe some of that, but also I think it's sort of the composition issue, or maybe just pulling back. But very impressive in terms of the writing style and the handling of the production. So yeah, really, really well done.
Excellent. All right, who's up next?
So we have Daniel Bestard next.
A familiar name.
Yeah.
There he is.
Oh, good. Yeah, right.
You know those moments when the world slows down and you see things differently? That's where I live. Between the beats and the breaths. Where the ordinary meets the unexpected. In this city of concrete and whispers, every corner holds a secret. Every alley, a story waiting to be told. I've learned that life's a series of choices, like a melody waiting to be composed. Each note, each step, it's all a part of a rhythm that only I can hear. Whether I'm riding through the city or lost in thought with my headphones on, I'm constantly chasing dreams. The kind that keep you awake at night and drive you forward. I'm Mia, and I make every beat count. This is my anthem, my journey through the symphony of life.
Okay. I thought one of the most endearing things about this, it had this lovely repeating chord sequence. It had this thing where it basically goes just that D over the E chord over the G sharp, and then the G chord, and that is such a compelling little chord trick. And the composer repeated that quite often, but it never got boring, it never got repetitive, because the composer did it in a different way. They did it high up the keyboard, then they did it low down, they did it on strings, stuff like that. As I mentioned on a few of the submissions on the feedback I gave, you do need to be careful when you bring chords in. It's the hardest thing as a composer. When do you come in and when do you get out? And how do you come in and how do you get out? It's the hardest part of the job. Especially at the beginning, it's best to wait for a slight gap. And I think the bit where she says, that's where I live, and I think you brought a chord in a tiny bit too early on that one. But that's a minor thing, really. Some really nice effective music over the motorbike as well. And it didn't change drastically for the motorbike. It's just had this lovely musical journey of its own. Some great chilled out chords and effective bass writing as well, lots of inversions. Musical sequence, while not acknowledging all the hit points, does provide a really captivating and compelling musical and emotional backdrop for the cue, with a bunch of really interesting, evocative chords. At the end of the day, it always comes down to harmony. It always comes down to harmony and how you realise that harmony. What textures do you do? Is it piano, is it strings or whatever, or is it woodwind? So yeah, great track. Okay, Steph, over to you.
Yeah, similar really. When it sort of starts and it seems to be really well punctuated actually. And I thought it was fitting around the voice, because as soon as I hear a piano, I think, oh no, actually, this is only because pianos can be problematic, particularly around dialogue and in this case voiceover. But I thought as soon as it started that kind of like the way it punctuated, I thought, oh, actually, it was really respectful again of the voice, and I thought the kind of more sort of space that it created, the more minimalist idea was definitely the right way to go with it. I just felt that constant sort of pulse that was running through it was my only thing, because I thought, I kept thinking, I wondered whether that would, what it would have been like without it actually, because I just because it's not there at the beginning, then it starts, and then I thought, and then it sort of remains sort of throughout, because some of the writing was really, really sort of lovely, I thought maybe that's sort of distracting it a little bit. But I did like this piece. I thought it was very well executed. And I think in this one in the notes it said about how much of a fan they were, a fan of me, actually. And I think sometimes that, the energy and the sort of commitment to that and their love of it actually sort of comes out. So I thought, in general, really, really nice piece, but maybe that sort of, as I say, that pulse thing again was sort of dictating a rhythm, which the voice needs to do rather than in music. But really, really good. Well done.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, actually, for what it's worth. Yeah. No, I really did. I thought it was dripping in emotion. I thought it was really nice. Okay, Stefan, who's next?
So, I meant to say, actually, if any of the people that were playing are here, actually.
I don't think so far. I don't think that...
No, it's okay. Okay, so next up we have Devin. Devin Remisant.
Okay. No sign of Devin on the Zoom.
1 second. Right, okay. Says. Here we go. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're not okay. Here we go.
You know those moments when the world slows down and you see things differently? That's where I live. Between the beats and the breaths, where the ordinary meets the unexpected. In this city of concrete and whispers, every corner holds a secret. Every alley, a story waiting to be told. I've learned that life's a series of choices, like a melody waiting to be composed. Each note, each step, it's all a part of a rhythm that only I can hear. Whether I'm riding through the city or lost in thought with my headphones on, I'm constantly chasing dreams. The kind that keep you awake at night and drive you forward. I'm Mia, and I make every beat count. This is my anthem, my journey through the symphony of life.
Okay, again, I thought this was really good. When Steph was talking earlier about the piano, he makes a very compelling point that the piano is a difficult instrument to write for. People always imagine that because it's self-contained, you can just whack something out on a piano, but you've got to treat the piano as a little pocket orchestra, and you've got to write for it very deftly. And when the composer came in with this that was just such a nice touch. And when we get the strings coming in where she says that's where I live, and you have the that major 7th going into the major 6th there, just really, really good, and in the right places as well. And I've put there, it's so important to have that moment of silence before and after a really important bit, and the writer had a bit of silence before the motorbike clip, and I think that was really crucial. Quite a lot of people went straight into it, and this one just pulled out slightly. Scored a really professional bit over the motorbike, and the music didn't distract as much as it could have done, even though it had drums. I think the dubbing was done really well here. If anything, possibly the chords could have come up a little bit in volume at that bit, actually, not down. Also, the music becomes very quite dramatic and slightly fearful around 24, which chimes with the dialogue, because she's saying something that's quite meaningful and symbolic at that point, and you really go with it. The music goes with this kind of negativity, which is really nice. The composer revisits that lovely F major 7 chord when you get Mia with the umbrella, so it's that kind of thing again. She's got the umbrella, and it's just that really happy, positive thing going on. The composing is excellent, I think, because you revisit these emotions that these chords create, and it shows real skill in terms of navigation and structure. Architecture and structure in music are so crucial, and you can often listen to music and people will go on about this chord and that chord, and often you'll find that it's the structure and the architecture that actually won the day. So it's not necessarily what you write, it's how you write it and where you put it. The way it goes from the F major 7 to the F minor, this one here where the composer goes, okay, really kind of nice, almost kind of James Bond style thing, but done really well, and fits really well here. This is really skillful stuff, and as we see Mia spinning round about 40 seconds, the composer goes to what we previously called the sci-fi chord change, which is in this case D minor to G. So just that uplifting thing. You might have heard us talk about it when we've done some of the master classes. It's a reappearing theme. Then when we get to see Mia on the train wearing the headphones, wearing the cans, you navigate this to a lovely F sharp minor chord. Great modulation, works really well. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Okay. I thought this was really nice as well. I thought one of the things that first struck me actually was how well it was produced. So when you're listening, particularly in headphones, these sort of spatial stuff and so things are panned left and right, giving it space. I thought that was handled really, really well. It's in the production of the sample drums, the drum machine stuff, I thought also was handled really, really well. A couple of things for me, because I thought this was a really strong submission actually in general, but a couple of things was that for a short clip, just be careful, I think, for me. It's like it starts off one way and then it suddenly becomes something else. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think in such a sort of short, condensed piece, sometimes it's like you have to let people get used to a scenario, and then if you change it that quickly, it's like, oh, do you know what I mean? So I think that was a little bit for me, because it started off one way, then it becomes quite electronic, and that was to connect up to that. 1 minute there is drums, then the drums drop out, then it starts. So again, the tempo is changing, or you're risking the tempo change. I think, as Brian said, I think the drums did work in this, but if you sort of having drums one section, then dropping, then picking them up, I think again the composer's dictating the rhythm of the piece rather than letting the film to do that. So you are definitely running a risk with that. Or potentially, I think it was handled kind of quite well, and I think it just putting sort of my director's hat on with this. I think if a director, saw that's what they would say. They would say, wait a minute, it's changing pace, and I don't want it to change pace, just at that precise point. But I think it was very. I think the vision for this was really well, was very clear. And I think both the writing and particularly the production to make it work was particularly good. So yeah, good stuff. Well done.
Wonderful. Okay, is that 3 we've done? Yeah.
That's 3. Yeah.
Okay, 3 more, is it? Yeah.
3 more to go.
What's the next one?
So next we have Sally. And Sally is
with us. Sally is amongst us.
Yes.
Hi guys.
Hello, Sally.
Hello, Sally.
Here she is. Are you ready, Sally? Are you sitting comfortably?
I am.
All right.
Right. Okay. Let's share this. Here we go.
Those moments when the world slows down and you see things differently? That's where I live. Between the beats and the breaths. Where the ordinary meets the unexpected. In this city of concrete and whispers, Every corner holds a secret. Every alley, a story waiting to be told. I've learned that life's a series of choices, like a melody waiting to be composed. Each note, each step, it's all a part of a rhythm that only I can hear. Whether I'm riding through the city or lost in thought with my headphones on, I'm constantly chasing dreams. The kind that keep you awake at night and drive you forward. I'm Mia, and I make every beat count. This is my anthem, my journey through the symphony of life.
Okay, I thought this was really good. I think of all the things we've watched so far tonight, I think this was, the most expressive in the fact that it did stuff that I didn't think it would do. It kind of went places that I wasn't expecting, and that's always a really nice thing. There was no kind of cliche stuff going on here at all. I love where the cello comes in, I think on the A flat, and there's a detuned piano, what feels like a detuned piano, and that gives the cue a kind of an emotional darkness which nobody else had done at that point, and that was really good. It was a great way to frame that scene. I think most people had done that happy, but the fact that you went into this kind of semi-dark area just really worked, and it really affected how we see Mia, I think, and her existence. It's not all nice, you know. Equally, as we hit the cityscape, I think it's 21 seconds, there's a lovely I think it's high strings, the C minor to G motif, which comes up quite a few times in the film, high up in the register, using some really expressive samples. But it's not just the samples, it's the writing. You know, whenever you hear something that sounds good, it's never just the samples, it is what people are doing to them, and it is the arranging. You know, in the middle of every composer's head there should be an arranger sat there that basically is second guessing everything you do. We move towards the bit where you see Mia standing with the umbrella, and there's some really interesting mid-string writing there. Again, I could say more if we'd got more time. I love how you avoided block chords and instead you opted for some bare sparse voicing in the strings. And at one point you go from that C minor to G, and then you go to that chord of C after you go to the major chord, and that is so refreshing. It's a real cranking up of the emotion, and it lets so much space into the film as well, which helps the film breathe, and it helps the music breathe, vice versa. Minimalist writing continued until we get to the bit where we see Mia smile at the camera, where we get a wonderful resolved C chord again, which moves straight to this from the C chord to this F minor over the A flat, and that's just really classic romantic writing. Generally some really expressive composing here, which puts a completely different spin on Mia and on the film. So yeah, brilliant, well done, and that's me.
Yeah, I really like this as well, Tommy. I thought it was great. There was my first thing actually, Tommy, which I sort of wanted to say was reading your notes on it, because you sent me notes that you saw it in 3 sections, and then you discussed what those sections were. So to me, it was like straight away you've looked at it like a filmmaker, the way you were sort of breaking it down, and that's the trick. And I thought you made it work. It's what Brian and I talk about a lot, so we've mentioned it tonight, is that it was meant to be there. It felt like it was meant to be there. You were really respectful of the film and with the voice, and it just sat with it brilliantly. I thought the other thing for me was you made it feel like it was quite simple, but it wasn't. There was a lot of craft to it and a lot of shape to it, but because you were really mindful of the film, you made it, the film was the priority. So in other words, it feels like you made the music's quite simple, and I realise it isn't, because there's a lot of effort and a lot of craft's gone into that. But it wasn't. I mean, the composition was one thing, but then the production of it as well, which I thought was great, because when I first saw this clip without any music, and Brian presented it to us, I thought, I immediately thought an electronic score, and your score proved me completely wrong. I thought, actually, you can make this work, and you definitely made it work. I thought it was great. My other thing was that also my one point was that maybe the high register stuff was gonna. It wasn't a problem, but I thought it could be a problem in terms of the mix, where it's going to get in the way of the dialogue. So just always be mindful of high register sort of strings. But other than that, I thought great work. So very, very well done.
Thanks, guys. That's really nice. Thanks. Yes, I actually had the strings sort of like an octave lower to begin with, and then I decided to just put it onto the harmonics, trying to get it up and over the voice, and I felt that added a little bit of tension as well, because when I first saw the film, I thought, oh, it's a pretty nice girly sort of thing, but actually as you look through it and look into it, there's actually slight hidden depths, and a little bit of danger to begin with, and also I never quite figured out why we've got this person like falling down at the end, and I didn't know whether she was actually committing suicide at one stage.
Blimey,
so
Sally.
I know there's like a dark element as well, but obviously, she's a character that has some sort of understanding of life, and somehow I wanted to put that across. The middle section I found the most difficult, but then it's ended up in this like quasi, it's like 3/4 sort of thing. But yeah. Yeah,
well, it's funny you should mention about the falling thing, because the score that you did for it was the title, and I was like, that you really made that moment stand out, actually. And it's as you said about how then you sort of think, oh, there's a real dark element to this the whole narrative, actually.
Yeah.
You brought that out. Yeah.
Right, thanks.
Sally, bring in the darkness. Really Thank you, Sally.
Absolutely.
The darkness from Derbyshire. I just want to say thank you, Sally, and it's great that you're here. It's nice to have this interaction, actually, so I would encourage people that do submit to try to join us if you can. So something's come up in the chat that I just want to address before we move on. Is that okay, chaps? So somebody's asked a really good question, actually. Jameson, I think it was, if I remember rightly. Was it Jameson? Yeah, who's a regular. About the spotting notes that we put into the bundle. So there are a few observations that I want to make. One is that Brian and Stefan are kind of pretty oblivious to what the spotting notes say. So the feedback here is not with respect to the spotting sheet at all. The reason being that the spotting sheet is there purely for you to use as an exercise in writing to a brief if you want to. But your submission can be whatever you fancy, and you can make your own spotting sheet. And so actually, to continue that thought, what we're going to do in the future is simplify actually the spotting sheets, not make them so specific, so precise. We're not going to lock them to the time code or anything like that, and we're going to make them more like a sort of narrative from the director saying what the film is fundamentally about.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. Is it being raised that it says one thing in the spotting sheet, and we come along and say something?
Yeah. I mean, Jameson was making a question. He wasn't really making a. Yeah, he was simply questioning whether what the consistency was, if you like, between the spotting notes and your observations. So I think that if you do want to reference your submission to our spotting guidance, then mention it in your submission and just say, I've tried to follow the spotting ideas, and then Brian and Stefan will bear that in mind. that's the idea really, is that you tell us what your approach was and what you're interested in Brian and Stefan analysing, if you like, when they listen to your piece. So yeah, we are going to simplify those spotting sheets, make them much more like just a descriptive piece from the director, which I think is much more representative of how things would be in the real world. And then you can optionally, of course, make your own detailed spotting sheet, as you wish. So yeah, that's that one.
I think the main difference is that in the real world, the spotting normally happens in a face-to-face meeting, so it's less prescriptive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, obviously it's difficult for you, Brian, in this situation, because you've got like hundreds of people, so you can't have meetings with them all. And so you therefore do a spotting sheet, but normally it's a conversation, and that conversation evolves. Sometimes the director can talk the composer into something, and sometimes the composer can talk the director out of something.
Yeah.
So it's an evolutionary process, the spotting. It's not kind of dictatorial in that way.
Sure. Well, I thought it was an interesting way of giving people a challenge for themselves to try writing to a brief rather than just writing whatever they fancy if they want to do that. But also, it also crosses over a little bit into sort of production music, doesn't it? Where you are really writing to a brief, and we are also going to touch on some production music stuff in the future as well. So there's lots of other interesting things coming along. But yeah, I just wanted to address about the spotting side of things. I hope that helps. Stefan, who's next?
Okay, we have Rachel Howey.
Rachel Howey. Okay, great. I don't think she's with us, but yeah.
You know those moments when the world slows down and you see things differently? That's where I live. Between the beats and the breaths, where the ordinary meets the unexpected. In this city of concrete and whispers, every corner holds a secret. Every alley, a story waiting to be told. I've learned that life's a series of choices, like a melody waiting to be composed. Each note, each step, it's all a part of a rhythm that only I can hear. Whether I'm riding through the city or lost in thought with my headphones on, I'm constantly chasing dreams. The kind that keep you awake at night and drive you forward. I'm Mia, and I make every beat count. This is my anthem. My journey through the symphony of life.
From now I can only see it as a suicide film, I'm afraid.
Oh no.
It's been ruined for me now. But I just want to say before you start, sorry Brian, that Rachel did email in response to my invitation that I sent to everybody to join us, and she says it's worth reading. She says I won't be able to be there in person, but I'm following these lectures and feedback sessions, and they're so useful. I wanted to say thank you to everybody who gives their time. So there you are, Brian and Stefan. I'm really excited to hear how more experienced people have interpreted the brief. Thanks for the great resources. So she's here in spirit.
Great. Excellent. I thought this was really good, and I thought what was nice about this is the fact that she waited a while before the music came in, and that's always nice when composers do that, because they're not just immediately jumping in. And when she does bring in the stuff which I think is in the cityscape scene, and she brings this kind of like this two notes together, the D and the G, and then she adds the A, and it becomes an actual chord. So the chord just doesn't just hit, it basically evolves and it kind of dribbles in. And that's a really nice way of writing subtle music, to basically write chords which are not fully fledged. They're basically missing in certain intervals, and to start almost with a suspended chord and then to gradually bring it into the real world and have a major chord or a minor chord. And she has this D sus2 chord, which is the D, and then she has the E. So you get these partial chords coming in, and then they finally flower into this full chord. So I think that's really good, introducing some great musical emotion into the film, especially considering the philosophical nature of the dialogue, which, you know, lots of composers have cottoned on to, but quite a few didn't. In this city of concrete and whispers, I mean, there's such great words here, and they're so evocative to composers. When we see the shot of Mia standing with the umbrella, you open the music out to the full G chord, which is this one here. So she opens the umbrella and the chord opens, and that's just really kind of poetic in itself, actually, as in a kind of emotional resolution. The next chord we see her in the cafe, and that's the bit for me where it does get a little bit dark in the film, and not a lot of people cottoned onto this, but this composer did. It makes the audience and the viewers reflect heavily on the subtext of this film. You know, is this person lonely in the city? I think she is, really. The harmony in this cue is occasionally what we call pandiatonic in nature. And I'm not going to try and explain pandiatonic harmony here, but we may be able to visit it in a lecture. It is quite an acquired taste, and it's quite a strange way of writing music. And it seems confusing when I get around to explaining what pandiatonic harmony is, but once you wrap your head around it, it's actually a great way of writing music. And we can maybe visit that on a masterclass. Frequently she uses pandiatonic writing. Pandiatonic writing is not something that you'd use all the time. If you used it all the time, listeners would go mad. It's the kind of thing that you go in and out of. You phase in and out of pandiatonic writing, which means that frequently there's no discernible or obvious harmonic center of gravity. That's what pandiatonic harmony can do. In a way, that chord that she does there, then you get it resolving, but initially that group of suspensions, you could call that pandiatonic writing. It makes the music appear a bit wistful and a little bit trippy, actually, to be honest with you. In addition, there's a definite cultural appropriation in terms of the textures, which I think is really nice. It's very easy to go over the top with this and just stick a load of textures in there which are just cliche, but she's done this really well. She's got a great Eastern feel at some point. Just before Mia says, "I'm Mia and I make every beat count," the music gets higher in pitch and becomes even more positive and life-affirming. And I think that is a really good thing, because the composer has followed the emotional arc of the film. And what Steph's often saying, at all costs, write to the film. Always write to the film. Don't just write to the music. So yeah, well done. That's me, Steph.
Yeah, just to pick up on that point, this is what I really liked about this piece. As Brian, you pointed out, that thing that there's no definite centre with the music, but the centre is the film. So it's like, it's absolutely nailed it for me. It's like this was about the film, and way Rachel created the score was that there was a bed of music for the film to sit in, and I think that's the trick. And the other point that Brian raised was that she waited before she came in. I'm not saying everyone should always do that, but when it does happen and I see it, I just think, oh yeah, because I often sort of say this to our students, is let the scene breathe, let the audience know where they are, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, give them some space. I think music's such a powerful tool. You can quite quickly influence what a viewer should be feeling. So quite often for a filmmaker, they're going to they want the emotion of the film to do that rather than your music. I mean, there's a good reason to have music at the very beginning, but because this was a good example where it was waited, you got that pause, you got used to this, and then it came in. and then it feels like, oh, it's meant to be there. So I thought that was really nicely handled. I thought, again, production was great. The other thing about Rachel's submission, actually, and that was what I do when I sort of write feedback. I look at the composer's notes, and I'll copy and paste the notes into my sheets, and I'll look at them as I write feedback. I didn't do this with Rachel's because it was so long. So what I'm getting at is that I thought right from the beginning, before I even looked at the clip, I thought this is going to be good, because she wrote so much in sort of preparation for what she was going to and how she was going to approach this. So a vision, her initial vision of what the film meant to her before she even started, was a big thing, and I think that actually came across in the music, that she'd spent some time thinking about it. I mean, there's a couple of things, again, similar to what I said to Sally, that perhaps, running the risk of the sort of higher end stuff clashing with frequencies of the dialogue. It wasn't too bad, but you do run a risk with that. I noted there was a crash cymbal that came in one point that was sort of distracting, and it was either bring it down, or it possibly didn't even need to be there at all. But I just thought it was just, I just enjoyed it. When you enjoy the clip, watching the clip, you just go, okay, this works, and you know that everything's as it should be. So yeah, very well done.
Just one thing to pick up on what Steph was saying about this this idea that this seemed to be very well conceptualized, and again, this is a subject we're going to deal with in a forthcoming masterclass. How do you conceptualize? How do you prepare yourself for writing the music? You got to remember, when you're writing music for TV or for film, music is the end result of a process. It's a mental and emotional process, and the end result of that is you write great music. But you don't start off writing great music. You start off thinking deeply about it. And I often tell our students, when I was doing more TV than I do now, certainly, if I got a documentary or something and they wanted 20 minutes of music and I would have a week, I would strictly, on the first day, on the Monday, just watch the film. That's all I would do. On the Tuesday, I would start thinking about, what does this sound like? Textures. Is this an orchestra? Is it electronic? Is it John Carpenter? Is it John Williams? Which way am I going with this? And then on the third day, you start writing. On the fourth day, you mix it. On the fifth day, you send it down to London or whatever, and then you hopefully get the green light. But the interesting thing about that is there's only a day of composing in space of a week, because the rest of the time is doing stuff that helps the composing, the pre-composition stuff, the conceptualization. And my rule of thumb is that if you do that bit right, and you conceptualize deeply about it, and you think about textures before you start writing a note of music, if you do that bit right, writing music is easy. If you're a decent composer, writing music should be easy, so long as you do the housework at the beginning, and you do this big concept. And it's not easy, the conceptualization, because you're dying to get to the piano, and you're dying to start writing music. But in some cases, it's the worst thing you can do. Okay, you conceptualize, like Steph said, and you think deeply about it, and you will always end up doing a better job by doing that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Definitely, because Rachel's notes were huge. Actually, it was immediately, that's what this is going to be good before I had a thing. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've got a question actually. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, my sound's gone a bit funny in my thing. So Stefan, I think, and maybe even Brian as well, mentioned about the fact that the music came in after a little bit into the film, and you mentioned how that was really effective. But obviously there are exceptions all the way, aren't there, with different films? There are some where it comes in right on the beat. There are some where the music comes in first before you see anything. And I just wondered whether you had some very quick general observations on how to make that kind of decision.
For me, if I go first on this, for me as a composer, obviously Steph's different kettle of fish because he's a director primarily, but for me as a composer, when I'm watching that, if I looked at that film and decided, like you're saying, do I start music straight away or do I wait until the cityscape? What would determine that is not how I feel on the day. It'd be literally the film and the mechanics of the film and what's going on. And on that early scene, you've got a train pulling in, you've got the doors opening, you've got this sound design from the train, and then she starts talking. So you've got all this stuff going on. and you haven't really got a place to get in there until she eventually goes quiet for a bit. And that'll be my logic in that. Personally, that'll be my logic. That'll be my way of dealing with it. It's not how do I feel, it's a case of what is the film trying to say. And if there's all these doors closing and tube trains rolling in, it's just a bit, hang on, where can I put the music? I don't know, Steph, whether you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's there's a few things that sort of spring to mind to say, and I could probably go on for hours, and I shouldn't, but is that
oh, go on.
It goes back to the conceptualizing thing. I mean, the first thing for me for this clip is the title, is Mia's World. So the viewers are going to have to be part of Mia's world. So let that happen. I say let that happen without music, because the music then creates an emotion, and actually we haven't got used to anything at that point. There is no set method though, of course. If a scene needs music straight away, of course. And this goes back down to my mentor at film school. I have to mention his name because he was a great filmmaker, a guy called John Krish, documentary filmmaker. And I did many masterclasses with him, and he used to sort of say to us, if you want to know about directing, all you have to know is the word choice. And absolutely, but this goes to any creative field. It's like you choose, the choice is yours. So to me, Rachel's gone, actually I'm not going to choose to go straight in. I'm going to let the audience into the world, into Mia's world. Then I'm going to bring music in. That was her choice. For me personally, I thought that was a great choice.
And also, don't forget that when you use silence as a composer, it's not real silence, it's musical silence. It's a choice, it's an emotional silence, you know. I mean, there was I think that Marion Moore, the poet, you know, said that whenever you put something instead of silence, you're saying that this is more important than silence. And silence is beautiful. So if you're going to replace it with music, you've got to be absolutely sure that you're replacing it with something that's more useful. And if you're simply blocking out the silence, that's not enough of a reason. You know? Yeah. So yeah,
that's it. Sorry to butt in on that.
Butt in, Sally. Butt in.
I thought to begin with that I would start later, but then I wanted to put across that this was quite a dark place that she was in. So it would be down to the director.
It would 100%.
You know what they're wanting, but that was my interpretation. This is a dark place she's in, therefore I need to come in straight away with a, you know. So
it's definitely a directing decision, and you're right, Sally. The other thing to mention, because I mean I know it's different, but it's when we did this stuff on subtext and Brian and I did the lecture. The film Blade Runner sort of came to my mind, and then the last session we did as well. So, you know, Blade Runner wouldn't be Blade Runner without that opening scene, bang, with music. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, actually, that was the choice. You're creating a world. So there is absolutely different interpretations. There's no one set way. It's what the filmmaker wants. But I think you're right, because he wanted that darkness. I just thought with this one, it reminded me of the title of the film. I thought, we're watching Mia's world.
I thought it was lovely. I thought it was lovely.
I think to be honest, if there's silence at the beginning of the film and it's a long silence, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, then I'd be in there straight away with music. But it's just on that one, because I could hear these doors clattering and the train coming in. I just thought, what can you seriously offer at that point? But it is, like I say, it's the director at the end of the day that will turn around to you and say, I want music, you know, or I don't want music. So
this is so interesting. I mean, and it touches on the idea of art in general, doesn't it? It's all about choice and taste. And I mean, and there's no single right or wrong answer often. You know, it's really fascinating, and obviously the relationship and conversation between the director and the composer is going to be so fundamental here, which is something that we don't have in these cases. So you know, that's part of your challenge, unfortunately, with these, is that you're working a little bit blind, but you know, it's good practice.
But that's a good choice, because as I was for me, that's what the positive bit about this is that the composers are getting a chance to be the directors
Yeah.
themselves here.
Yeah.
And they're making those choices.
Yeah.
And as I said about Sally's piece, that she looked at the structure of the clip, and that those are filmmaking methods of how she constructed that piece. So I think that's a really positive thing, that they're not only composers here, but they're filmmakers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it came up actually in our event yesterday. So we had this event yesterday with composers, and we showed some of our forthcoming materials, a sneak preview, and there was a lot of discussion around this, that we showed some materials that had no music, and many composers in the audience were expressing that it stands quite well, without music. And the challenge is, I don't want to just put music on there because I'm a composer. I want to put music on there that helps strengthen this as a piece of work. And really interesting. Yeah. And the question arises, well, I like it as it is, therefore what can I do? This is difficult. It's really interesting.
It's like the night. I think we talked about him on the masterclass, Night Shyamalan, the guy that does the some great films like Signs and Sixth Sense, and he always has this idea, this rule of thumb, that he'll make a film that works without music. And every time he'll go to James Newton Howard and say, this works without music. And every time James Newton Howard will basically prove him wrong and will basically make it work even better. But it's an interesting idea that the director initially tries to make it work without. So they don't put any music behind it, no temp tracks. I mean, Steph, when you make a film, I mean, did you used to temp them, or did you just used to try and make it without music?
A bit of both, actually. So, and it reminded me of it when I was a film student, about learning this stuff. And I saw an interview with Walter Murch, who's the sound designer for Godfather, Apocalypse Now, and all those films. And I always sticks in my head is that filmmakers do, not all of them, of course, because a lot will write and direct to music, but they see it without music, and then when they get it to the editing phase, they'll go, well, there's not enough emotion in this. What do I do? That's when they go. So they do see it without, and then they'll go. That's when the temp bit comes in. They'll go, right, stick a bit of temp music on there. It's good to see if the emotion comes out. And that's when the problem is, they're then wedded to that's a whole other discussion, isn't it? But
awful, yeah.
But it's because there's not enough emotions, and quite often filmmakers are seeing this without music and feeling it without music, and that's why I think this is what's great about doing the QTube and the whole setup we've got with this, is that, as I said before, it's the chance for the composers to get that experience of doing it themselves without a director going, no, it needs to go there, so they can see where they may be making errors.
I mean, Brian was talking a few weeks ago about doing one on, I'm sure you were, Brian, a few weeks ago, about doing a session on temp tracks and also on scores that have been rejected.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. Yeah,
we touch on that at the Conservatoire. We will play the rejected score, and then we'll play the real score and see what people think, and then we'll try and be the director and try and figure out, why did the director say no to this? Why did the director, for example, why did Peter Jackson work with Howard Shore for months on King Kong, and then fire him 3 weeks before the release date, and get James Newton Howard in, who had to write 100 minutes of music in basically 3 weeks? And that is such a difficult decision. That is just full of potholes you can fall down. But he obviously, who fires Howard Shore? So yeah, I think it's an interesting one for the future, is just to discuss that, and why this music didn't work, and why the director had those opinions. It's a really important area.
Or do we agree that it didn't work as well? The director is a human, and perhaps we prefer the Howard Shore.
Well, most of the ones that me and Steph do, we actually come down on the side of the director, which obviously grates a little bit with me, frankly. But we did 2001, and I had to say that I love the composer Alex North. I think he's an overlooked and underused composer, and he had a dreadful time on that, and he ended up in hospital, and they were bringing him to the recording session on a stretcher, and the whole thing was hideous. But the director's choice of music in the end did work, because what the director wanted was not background music. He wanted foreground music, you know, and that's what Alex North didn't really get told, or didn't realise, that they don't want background music, they don't want film music, they want music. And there's such a difference between film music and music. So it is an interesting discussion, which I think we could fill quite adequately.
We are doing. And actually, the other thing that's really interested me, that's come out of this little tangent, is even the title of the film being important. And
completely.
you know, I'm going to be more careful in future.
You have to. You're the director. So
I know, Jesus, the pressure. Thanks, guys. But yeah, no, it's really.
Brian, can I ask you a question? Probably not the time, but the person that did the voiceover for me as World, was that somebody you know, or was that right? Okay, because I just thought that was just fantastic.
Yeah, she's part of the QTube sort of family, as it were, and she's also done voiceover on a few others. The cinema one that we did, and also the car one that we did, and a few others. So you've heard, members of the community that have used clips have heard her voice before, and she's great. Yeah, she's really, really great, and she's doing quite well. You know, she's based in London, and she's graduated last summer from acting school, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this. She's got a really good agent, and she's doing well. So we've been very lucky to get her, actually. So
absolutely. I think it made all the difference. It really did. Yeah.
Okay, better than AI.
Oh God, yeah.
Which is a controversial topic, because there was a bit of AI.
Well, it's like a temp track, isn't it? AI. I won't go
he's
there.
off. He's off now. No. He's off.
Yeah,
we've lost him.
Yeah.
All right, we've got one more, right, Steph? Is that right?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
We've got Carl Eade left. Yeah, so
Okay.
I'll shaft you that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
You know those moments when the world slows down and you see things differently? That's where I live. Between the beats and the breaths, where the ordinary meets the unexpected. In this city of concrete and whispers, every corner holds a secret, every alley a story waiting to be told. I've learned that life's a series of choices, like a melody waiting to be composed. Each note, each step, it's all a part of a rhythm that only I can hear. Whether I'm riding through the city or lost in thought with my headphones on, I'm constantly chasing dreams. The kind that keep you awake at night and drive you forward. I'm Mia, and I make every beat count. This is my anthem, my journey through the symphony of life.
Okay, this was sublime. This was just completely on a different level. It was just fantastic. I really like the subtle light touch beginning with the chords. I think it's an E minor going to a C over an E, and when we see the cityscape, we then go to the F6, and one or two people have done that, you know, where you go from the E minor to the C, and then to the F6, just dripping in romance and tragedy. And then the composer then goes to the that just beautiful. One thing I did notice, it's got a lovely soft reflective air to it, and I did feel a slight touch of I don't know if people are familiar with Albinoni's Adagio, a well-known piece of classical music, and that I think might have been running as a temp track in this composer's head, because it was just, but it wasn't a rip-off, it was just a very subtle appropriation. Also, what was nice about this was the music just carried, if you listen very carefully, the music carries on going up in pitch all the way as we go through the film, and that was just a brilliant way to do it. But I think the coup d'etat on this is the use of at first I thought it was a double bass, then I thought it was a cello, and then I thought it was double bass, and I still can't figure out which one it is. I thought it was double bass, but it goes so high that possibly it was a cello, I can't remember, but it's beautiful writing, and it's obviously a real instrument, and it's just absolutely stunning. And it just shows you, if you stick a real instrument into anything, whether it's just a lone instrument like a violin or a double bass or a cello, it has this ripple effect to the rest of the music, where it makes the rest of the music sound as authentic. That's a wonderful thing about live instruments. They have this ripple effect to samples. They'll make samples sound real. When we hit the section just after she's seen in the cafe, there's a gorgeous bass solo, I'm still calling it a bass here, which coincides with her referencing the melody. She references the word melody. Now, a few people took that reference and ran with it and just wrote a melody, whereas this composer just basically eased into this gorgeous, low, sardonic melody. Absolutely gorgeous. It works really well, despite the fact that essentially it's competing with the dialogue, because it's written so well. It's written behind the back of the dialogue. Great dubbing as well. The solo evolves and increases in pitch and emotional intensity, and the bit where she talks about "this is my anthem," where we then start to hear plucked strings, that is just stunning. That was just ridiculous. Around 117, we hear the F6 again. Those chords I've already played, you know, the kind of F6. And then this one. And again, it's that repetitive, that all great composers will do that. They will repeat certain bits, and it'll become like an earworm where you can't live without it, you know. Stunningly beautiful work, and what's more, totally original in terms of stylization, I would argue. The mix of the philosophical nature of the dialogue, the dreamy pictures, and the soft romantic and faintly tragic music is just spot on. So that's me, Stefan.
Yeah, similar. I think Brian picked out the one of the main points I was going to mention was in the voiceover about the anthem. So, and this Carl sort of wrote just to enhance that, because in Carl's notes, so again going back to the conceptualizing point, I mean, Carl didn't, you know, it was his notes were there. It wasn't a huge amount of notes, but he was to the point, because he pointed out about Mia's journey. So it sort of touches on all the things we've talked about tonight, which was Mia's World, the title of the film, and the idea of Mia's journey. And then she mentions the word anthem, and he wrote for Mia as a character. I think that's one of its successes. But it was, again, like I mentioned earlier, it was also, it felt like there was the kind of the simplicity of it. It made it sound like it was simple, but it wasn't simple, because there was a lot of craft in this, in the way it was shaped. So again, this is the real knack of film music, to sort of say, well, it's part of the cinematography, it's part of the acting, it's part of the storytelling, it belongs with the voiceover, it's everything's working together. It's part of the editing, everything's working as one. So that tells you about filmmaking craft. So each part of the filmmaking production has their own little bit that they do, and that's what Carl's music did. It worked along all the other elements to it, and it fitted really, really well. And the space at the beginning, so the notes I wrote down was the subtlety of it, the start, the plenty of room for the voiceover. And I mean, I said it was a cello, so I don't know whether it was a bass or a cello, but I thought it was the way it was handled, and it did actually run the risk, like some of the others I've mentioned, of getting in the way, but I think the mix made that work. But also I thought the way that it's sort of the shape of it, because there was potential for it to slightly get in the way, but again, I thought it was crafted and shaped really, really well. And then once the voiceover stops, the music takes over, which is great. And then the writing for the end section was particularly great. There's only one small point was, again, it could be a taste thing. We talked about choice as well tonight a lot. There was some quite heavy panning for me. So like the cellos on the right hand side and then some of the percussions on the left. Again, it's not, some people won't be fine with that. For me, it made it feel slightly unbalanced. If it's not, it has to be exactly dead center, but it felt a little bit panned to one side, so it feels slightly unbalanced, particularly, again, referring to the title of Mia's World, needs to be focused on it and not notice things on different sides. But that's just me. I thought great work, really well.
It'd be good to actually at some point to for this guy to get in contact to whether it was a bass or a cello, whether it was both, because I find myself sat here as an orchestrator, can't figure out whether it's a bass or a cello. I mean, what Steph just said about them being on the right, of course, that would say it's a cello, because that's, if he was panning it as per an orchestra, they'd be on the right as you face them. Whereas there were some of those initial notes that would be at lower than the cello range. So that's why I thought, oh, it's a double bass. But then as it carried on, I thought, hang on, I'm not sure double basses can work that up well. So I'd really like to know also whether anybody else out there listening right now, whether, you know, what you guys thought, was it a cello or a bass? Because I'm completely lost with this. Yeah, I thought cello, but it's just, there was some of those really low guttural sounds that were really like of a much bigger instrument, of a double bass, and I just can't figure it out. Maybe it was both. Okay, fair enough. Yep.
Cello.
Yeah.
As a cellist, I initially thought cello. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah.
We'll have to get in touch with the guy and find out what it is, because it's beautiful writing.
Yeah,
it's just those low notes. They were, Yeah, maybe he's got the world's only 5-string cello. I mean, maybe he's done that, you know.
Brilliant.
Oh wow, they exist. Sorry, Brian. I'm just leaving a comment. They exist. I did not know that. Well done. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's also whether that quartet does it have to be a traditional string quartet, you know, 2 violins, cello and double bass? Sorry, beg your pardon. But can it be, for example, could it be 4 cellos? Could the composer think, I really want the sound of 4 cellos? Could it be that? I don't know whether that's possible. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but, you know, maybe that's an idea for the future. Say 4 stringed instruments. Choose which ones do you want, you know? Yeah. Over to you, Stefan.
Yeah. Okay. So again, it was difficult to choose. And we sort of made a big sort of speech at the beginning about pitfalls, but we've decided that we're going to award it to Carl, which was the last one for this session.
Okay, great. Just just realised I was probably muted for most of that conversation, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, brilliant. Well, congratulations, Carl. That is superb. We'll be in touch, and we will work through that with you to get ready for the session with the Northern Film Orchestra. And thank you to everybody.
Well done to everyone. Though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to everyone that joined us live. Does anybody put your hand up? Do you want to ask a question or make any observations? Those of you that are here in the chat, anybody?
Just about the string quartet. I mean, if we wrote a piece for that, is it all right to include synths and whatever as well?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So
not just the straight quartet.
Sure. So the submission doesn't have to be in any sense related to string quartet, but if you are then awarded the prize, as it were, you can choose any piece of music you like to be recorded by the players. So I mean, it could be the piece that you submitted, or it could be a completely different piece, and whether you want to augment that with
I'm really like wondering about the piece that, obviously it's going to be different, but the piece that we write for or we have already, you know, just thinking of somebody like Bertelmann, you know, who, you know, has, you know, live instruments, but so like subtly in the background has synths and whatever as well. It's all right for us to do that.
Oh yeah,
sort of piece,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the way I see it, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is that somebody can write music and they can write an entire piece for much more than a string quartet, and then the string quartet is added to the recording, or the string quartet is recorded first and then the composer takes it back and then layers around it. And that's why I asked about the idea of whether they could write for 4 cellos instead of the usual string quartet, because the thing about the string quartet, which I don't know if that's what Sally was alluding to, but the thing about the string quartet is it is a very specific sound. Unlike an orchestra that can be moulded into almost anything, a string quartet is a very specific sound. And for example, I've had composers that have used a string quartet and have added more synth strings, sampled strings, and it hasn't worked because you're stuck with that textural vehicle which is a string quartet. Whereas if they could determine and say, I'd like to use 2 violas and 2 cellos, please, and I'd like it to play just this small little bit in my piece of music, just that bit from A to B, I want it to just layer those chords. I think that if there was that kind of freedom and flexibility, it would possibly get rid of the string quartet problem a little bit.
Yeah. No, I totally appreciate that. I mean, it's just unfortunately down to, as always with these things, practicalities. So the way that we run these sessions is that once we've accumulated enough of these monthly awards, we will block book the string quartet to do them all in one bash. So we can't have 16 different players kind of chopping and changing. So it's just down to practicalities, unfortunately. Everything's always slightly compromised and limited by practicalities. So that's the particular compromise on this occasion.
I guess what the composer could do is they could, if they won the session, they could get the cello players in, and they could get the cello player to overdub, and they could take that as their prize. And say, I would like to overdub the cello 3 times rather than use 30 minutes of a string quartet. So I guess there's a way around everything, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, once we contact you, we will put you in touch with the orchestra, and you could explore these ideas with them direct rather than through the middleman, me, who knows nothing. But yeah, no, that's great. Well, thank you, Brian and Stefan, and thank you for everybody on the Zoom. Are there any other quick? Does anybody want to raise a hand with any observations? No? Okay. Well, I'm going to do the wrap. So I'm going to do the little prize draw shortly for the Fracture Sounds sample library. But before I do that, I just want to mention a couple of Q-tubey things, as is my way. So we had a lovely event yesterday in Los Angeles where we previewed some of our productions and met a good number of composers. We had about 60 or 70 people present. We did it together with Joy Music House, who are a wonderful organisation over here in LA, and I'm actually meeting them for lunch after this, so that's fantastic. And on Saturday, for those of you that are in the area, we have a walk on Saturday morning, 10 o'clock in Griffith Park, starting at the Bear statue, which is at Ferndale Drive off Los Feliz Boulevard, which hopefully means something to somebody. So I would love to meet any of you there that are able to come. And so I guess without further ado, I will do the prize draw for the sample library. There, hopefully you can see the wheel of fortune, and I shall give it a spin. Good luck, everybody. Thank you to Fracture Sounds for their support. And today, this was not a fix, I promise.
Oh, no.
David Simonson, who I met yesterday, I promise you he didn't slip me a $10 note or anything. This is a genuine random thing. So congratulations, David. That's brilliant. So I'll be in touch with you to connect you with Fracture. But basically, David, have a look at the Fracture Sounds website. You can choose anything apart from the bundles, so any individual sample library, and then just reach out to me and let me know what you fancy, and we'll organise that for you. So yeah, and anybody that has won previously, I always say this and nobody ever responds, let me know how you got on with your prizes and what you think of the sample libraries. That would be really good, and what you've done with them. That would be really good to hear. Okay, that's quite enough for me. We've done 1 hour and 37 minutes. That's a marathon, isn't it? Thanks for sticking with us, guys.
Yes, no, thank you.
Thanks so much to everybody with your smiling faces on Zoom. That's nice to see.
Yeah.
And
makes a big difference when people
yeah,
Zoom as well. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
and good luck with the current challenge for those of you that are doing it or have done it. The Greg's is a bakery. No, Greg.
Whenever you say Greg,
Brilliant.
Start thinking cheese onion.
Choose your pastry, and yeah, good luck
You
with.
can take the man out of Manchester, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Good luck with that, guys, and hopefully I'll see some of you on Saturday morning. And yeah, take care, everyone, and have a great week.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Take care.
See you later.
See you later.